So, hello everyone, we will continue with the moisture vapor transmission. So, we are discussing the moisture vapor transmission through fabrics made of fibers at different proportion of hydrophilic fiber. So, as we have discussed that with the increase in hydrophilic content, the moisture vapor transmission increases. This increase is mainly due to the absorption, desorption and also the diffusivity of the diffusion coefficient of the material is actually reduced. That this we have discussed. Now we will discuss that effect of the shape factor. So, effect of shape factor on the relative moisture vapor permeability. In earlier segment, when we discussed the same for same fabrics, when we discussed the wicking characteristics, liquid moisture transmission characteristics, the increase in shape factor increases the wickability. But in case of moisture vapor transmission, the trend is just reverse. Here its moisture vapor transmission rate reduces with the increase in shape factor, same as that of the air permeability. Air permeability reduces with the increase in shape factor. So, the higher shape factor means the trilobal, in that case the triangular and circular fiber. So, that is circular fabric. So, this is the trilobal. The circular fabric has got fabric made of circular fiber is circular polyester fiber has got highest water vapor permeability. And if we see the air permeability and moisture vapor permeability, there is a straight line relationship. This is actually there is a highly correlated, and this is the moisture transmission. Here the moisture transmission is mainly through the diffusion here, okay? Mainly through diffusion, because the fiber which we are using it's a polyester, it's a shaped polyester, because polyester filament. Here the non-Fickian diffusion is not there, only the Fickian diffusion takes place. That is why it is directly related with the air permeability, which is air permeability, which the moisture transmission takes place through the air pocket. The result indicates that the fabric with the circular filament has highest water vapor permeability and it reduces with the increase in shape factor. So, this is basically due to there is a good correlation. This is basically due to the air drag, the vapor pressure drag due to higher specific surface area of the fiber with higher shape factor. So, the good correlation has also been found between air permeability and relative water vapor permeability. So, that in this for a polyester fiber, fabric made of polyester fiber. So, if we want to know the trend of moisture vapor permeability, we can test simply air permeability, then we can get the idea. But for hydrophobic fiber, we have other phenomena. So, that we have to understand this phenomenon. As the shape factor increases, the specific surface area of fiber also increases. Furthermore, the drag resistance to air and water vapor flows through the fiber surface, okay, decreases with the increase in the shape factor. Okay. So, the flow will decrease. So, the drag, as the drag increases, which results lower air flow and water vapor permeability. So, that drag increases due to the increase in the surface presented by the fiber. Air permeability and water vapor permeability decreases with the decrease in fiber diameter because of the increase in specific surface area. At lower fiber diameter, the specific surface area increases, that is why water vapor permeability decreases. The same trend is observed in case of air permeability also. This result can also be explained by higher specific surface area that we have seen, but this trend will be different, would be different if we use the hydrophobic fiber. Now, we will discuss another aspect, important aspect of moisture transmission through textile material is moisture evaporation and moisture condensation. These two phenomena are extremely important in clothing comfort, understanding the clothing comfort. So, moisture vapor transmission, if moisture vapor gets transmitted, moisture gets evaporated, there will be associated evaporative heat transmission, and when moisture gets condensed within the structure, within the fabric, that means it will change the conductivity, thermal conductivity of the fabric. So, moisture evaporation and moisture condensation, it actually directly affect the thermal conductivity of the textile material. So, understanding these two phenomena, evaporation and condensation, is extremely important. So, first we will discuss the moisture evaporation. So, moisture evaporation and condensation also have significant effect on moisture vapor transmission through porous material. So, evaporation and condensation, they are important and they depend on temperature of atmosphere and moisture distribution in porous material. So, that the depending on the moisture, the temperature and moisture distribution, the evaporation and condensation takes place. The importance of evaporative heat in maintaining the thermal balance become more crucial when with the increase in surrounding temperature, that is very important. So, evaporative heat, that means a latent heat, when the moisture gets transmitted, latent heat from our body, it is important when the surrounding atmospheric temperature increases, because the normal process of heat transmission, that is conduction, convection and radiation, reduces, because the temperature gradient is difference in temperature is reduced, that we have already discussed. During the evaporation of liquid body perspiration, that is our sweat, the latent heat is taken away from the body, thus body cools down. Also, increase in surrounding atmospheric temperature close to screen. So, that as the body temperature cools down, it increases, because it takes latent heat. So, surrounding temperature increases. Okay. In this case, due to the low temperature difference between the human body and environment, the heat transmission through radiation, conduction and convection reduces. So, this is important. So, the initially there was temperature gradient. Our body temperature was higher than the atmospheric temperature, but as the evaporative heat is evaporation is taking place, liquid evaporation is taking place, evaporative heat is taken away from our body. So, our body, the skin temperature is reduced, but as the heat is coming out from our body to the surrounding atmosphere. So, lower surrounding atmosphere has become increased, the temperature is increased. So, effectively there is the temperature gradient has reduced. So, initially suppose our body temperature was skin temperature was say 36 degree Celsius, and after the latent heat is taken, so it has become say 34 degree Celsius, and surrounding temperature if it was 28 degree Celsius, it has become say 32, 33. So, the temperature gradient has reduced. So, the proper heat transmission through radiation, conduction, convection has reduced. So, in that case the evaporative heat transmission is extremely important. So, when the negative temperature gradient is there, that means the at higher climatic temperature, higher than our body temperature. In that case, as we have already discussed, the only phenomena is that of cooling of our body is by evaporative heat exchange. So, latent heat of evaporation of water is very large, that is 2300 kilojoule per kg. It is a very high. That means, small quantity of evaporation which actually transmits the significant quantity of heat. The percent present of air also enhance this heat transmission, because the evaporative moisture will get removed and additional cooling will take place. So, at wind condition its cooling will take place. Now, coming to the next phenomena, it is a condensation. So, condensation of moisture vapor is a direct result of fabric being saturated by liquid perspiration. That means, in the vapor form, when it is getting transmitted, it may get condensed, okay, and with some specific condition, and it generally occur within the fabric when the local vapor pressure increases to saturation vapor pressure at certain temperature. So, at certain temperature, if the local vapor pressure is increased, that means during transmission of moisture vapor it gets condensed. So, one parameter is that at certain temperature, a particular temperature, if the vapor pressure is high, then condensation will take place, and also at low atmospheric pressure. So, condensation generally occurs when the atmospheric pressure is low. The relatively warmer, so when the atmospheric pressure is low, that means the fabric will also be low, the temperature of the fabric will also be low. That relatively warmer moisture vapor, when it comes from the skin, when it comes under in contact with the cooler fabric surface, in that case fabric will act as the cold wall. Okay. So, the condensation will take place. So, the cooler fabric, that means at lower atmospheric temperature, when moisture gets transmitted, during transmission it will strike a cold wall which is actually effectively fabric, and the moisture will get condensed. It has been reported that below, so it is the below 10 degree Celsius temperature. So, the condensation can occur at atmospheric temperature below 10 degree. So, if that atmospheric temperature is say below 10 degree, so condensation will start. In the case of waterproof fabric, this condensation phenomenon is severe, because water, the moisture cannot get transmitted, and water, if it forms the water droplet, the moisture if it condense, then it will not go, it will not be escaped. So, that within the structure, fabric structure, moisture will start condensing. Okay. Water vapor can diffuse from the skin to the fabric layer easily, but diffusion from fabric layer to the atmosphere is difficult, because it is a waterproof, condensation take place. Okay. So, the condensation basically takes place in 3 stages. Initially, dry porous fibrous material takes place in 3 stages. First stage, what is there? The certain conditions are generated, that is velocity, temperature, vapor concentration field are developed. This actually proper condensation, the stages for condensation, situations for condensation take place first. So, these are the field, that is temperature field, vapor concentration field, velocity field are generated. In second stage, the liquid content increases gradually, but still too low to move. So, gradually the liquid content will increase from vapor to liquid formation will get initiated because of the first stage, because temperature has it's low, it has become low, vapor pressure concentration is high, velocity is also low. So, at high velocity it will take away, at higher moisture temperature moisture concentration condensation will not take place, lower atmospheric pressure, lower or lower vapor concentration, condensation will not take place. But for a particular situation condensation, the condition has been developed, and then the liquid content will gradually increase, and in third stage liquid content increases further. So, this is, and third stage the liquid content increases further and goes beyond certain threshold level, and then the pendulum like droplet will start, okay, like drops of condensed, okay, start and begin to move from under the surface tension and gravity. So, gradually the condensed air will start moving from one place to another, gradually to move through along the fiber surface. Now, the condensation of moisture, that is at a saturation level. So, if the vapor concentration in both surfaces of the fabric is at saturation level, that means the fabric is placed in saturated air. In that case what will happen, the throughout the thickness the moisture concentration will be there, same concentration will be there, okay. There will be condensation inside the structure. But if in case of the condition where the atmospheric moisture is below saturation level at a specific atmospheric temperature, if it is below the saturation level, the condensation occurs only over certain region within the fabric. So, that total thickness will not get condensed. So, that will be within a particular place, that is a particular zone of condensation, it is not evenly distributed. That means, that particular wet zone, that is called wet zone, that condensed zone is actually separated by two dry zone, both the sides. So, if we talk about the fabric thickness, so if it is a thickness in a particular zone, there will be wet zone, but other zones will not be wet, it will be dry zone. So, in this case the condensation of moisture vapor occur in the fabric which forms a wet zone separated by two dry zones, okay. And that wet zone travels. So, it is not that whole structure, whole thickness is getting condensed, but that particular wet zone it travels, and proportion of the wet zone increases with the increase in the condensation of moisture. So, gradually this thickness of the wet zone increases if our condensation keep on increasing, but if the that wet zone is, if the increase the moisture vapor pressure is increasing, okay, but if the moisture vapor pressure is not increases, what happen, it travels, the progress of condensation. So, if gradually if it is increasing, now it is increasing, whether it will increase in left side or right side, that depends on the temperature of which a particular side. So, it has been observed, the study report says the progress of condensation process of moisture vapor takes place mainly in the direction of the warmer side rather than the cooler side, which is very interesting. Typically, ideally we think that the cooler side the condensation will take place, but condensation at the wet zone, the thickness of wet zone increases gradually, but that it travels towards the warmer zone. So, that is the study report. Now, we will start the evaluation methods of moisture vapor transmission. So, there are different methods of moisture vapor transmission measurement. So, we will discuss one by one. So, different standard methods are available. So, first method is evaporative disk method or control disk method, which follows the British standard PS 7209, which is evaporative disk method. Similar to that, another method is developed by ASTM E9666 is upright cup method or Gore cup method. Gore cup method or upright cup method, this is actually it is this evaporative disk method and this upright cup method, these are approximately same methods. So, we will discuss similar. Next is inverted cup method and desiccant inverted cup method. So, these are the two methods, inverted cup method and desiccant inverted cup method, ASTM F2298 method. Desiccant inverted cup method, okay. Moisture vapor transmission cell, where we can measure the moisture vapor transmission rate, we will discuss, and dynamic moisture permeability cell, okay, ASTM F2298, again sweating guarded hot plate, and also the permetest, that we will discuss. Permetest is another method, and we will also discuss one method developed by our lab, that is microclimate simulator. So, evaporative disk method, it is basically percentage water vapor permeability index, permeability index in terms of percentage it measures. Cup method, it measures the quantity of moisture vapor transmitted per unit area per day. Sweating guarded hot plate, evaporative heat transmission it measures. Holographic visualization method, okay. This we will discuss. First is that evaporative disk method. In this method, known weight of water is kept in the disk. So, known weight of water is kept here, okay, and it is kept in a standard atmospheric temperature. An open mouth is covered by fabric. Okay. After certain time, the system reached the equilibrium. So, that means the water flow rate is actually at constant rate, its water is flowing. So, when it reaches equilibrium, the water vapor permeability is measured by successive weighing of the disk. So, this disk along with the sample we weigh at different time interval, and relative water vapor permeability is calculated by comparing the reference fabric sample. So, this method actually measures the relative water vapor permeability with the known sample. So, first we measure the known sample, then our test sample and compare with that. Okay. So, water vapor permeability is measured by the 24 to m, where m is the mass of the moisture vapor lost. So, at initial and at certain time, after time t we measure the mass. So, what is the difference? We can measure the mass of the water vapor lost. Okay. T is the time between the two weight, A is the area of the disk, that is area of the fabric, and water vapor permeability of fabric and reference fabric are that is the reference fabric, and with this ratio we can get the relative water vapor permeability. Okay. Next is the upright cup method. The system is exactly same, only it follows the ASTM principle. Earlier one it follows the BS standard. The same principle air, the water is there, air layer and the fabric specimen is there, and calculation is exactly same way it calculate. Here actually it is we keep the constant water. Earlier we can keep any quantity of water, that is here the constant quantity of 100 ml water is kept, fabric is mounted on the cup, okay, and the it is temperature and humidity and air velocity is specified and its weighing, and the same way it measures. So, G is the mass of moisture vapor is transmitted, A is the area. So, this way we can measure the moisture vapor permeability by upright cup method. This is the cup method, and if we see it is a inverted cup method, it is just actually reversed, where the hydrophobic PTFE membrane is used to seal the mouth of the cup to prevent the wetting of the specimen. So, here it is not simple the fabric, the first the fabric the cup is there and then the mouth is sealed by the hydrophobic PTFE membrane. So, the idea of PTFE membrane is that it is a porous micropora is there, it is a waterproof, but breathable. It does not allow the water in liquid form, but it allows the moisture in vapor form. Okay. So, then the specimen is placed over the PTFE membrane and cup assembly is placed in invert condition. So, then it is inverted condition and assembly is weighed periodically throughout the day. So, it is a simple, and this is mainly used for waterproof sample. This actually technique is used for waterproof material, and here if we can directly use measure the for PTFE membrane also. PTFE membrane can be our sample, okay, or any other waterproof sample. Desiccant inverted cup method, it is typically it is similar to that inverted cup method, but here it is not that simple, but here it is an inverted cup, but principle is totally different. Here this is the fabric samples, that yellow one is the fabric samples, and it is a sandwiched in between two membrane. One is that PTFE membrane in the upper side and in bottom side another PTFE membrane, but we can eliminate, we may or may not use this PTFE membrane in the upper surface. Now, what is happening here, and here it is a desiccant potassium acetate, okay, in any desiccant material which actually absorbs the moisture immediately. Now, with this setup, this is the water tank. With this setup, when we actually this system, total system is immersed inside the water tank, the water in vapor form will get transmitted through the fabric, through this total arrangement, but liquid will not get transmitted. As soon as the water is transmitted, this desiccant it's actually it absorbs the moisture vapor. So, that this total system remains dry, and but mass is increasing. So, we can take the weight and we can calculate the moisture vapor transmission. So, the similar to that of inverted cup method, but only difference is that in this method the cup used in this method is partially filled with desiccant such as potassium acetate, calcium chloride, or anhydrous calcium sulphate, or anhydrous magnesium chlorosulphate. So, these are the MgClO2O4. So, these are the chemicals which are actually used as the desiccant material. Okay. The drying agent, these are the basically drying agent. The drying agent stays in direct contact with the fabric. So, we can we may use this upper PTFE or may not use. So, normally we do not use this upper PTFE. So, these drying agents are these are directly contact with the fabric, minimizing the path of the water vapor flow. So, as soon as the water vapor goes in other side, so it immediately takes away. So, that proper water vapor transmission takes place. The inverted cup is covered by the specimen, and then the specimen is covered by another piece of waterproof and moisture vapor permeable membrane, that is PTFE membrane. The inverted cup along with the specimen is immersed into the water bath filled with the distilled water with the help of the specimen holder. So, that way, and the measuring cup initially is weighed by the means of balance, okay, and then inverted and inserted into the specimen holder. After certain time, the measuring cup is removed and reweighed again. So, the difference is in this way, difference is calculated. W2 is the weight after test, W1 weight before test. So, this is the method. So, this way we can calculate the water vapor permeability. Another method is that moisture vapor transmission cell. This in this method, it is basically two cells are used. So, one is the upper cell, another is the lower cell. Lower cell is actually filled, partially filled with water. So, there is a lower cell, it is partially filled with water, and then fabric specimen, it is covered with the fabric specimen, and upper cell is kept dry. Okay. Initially at the start by the drying agent, dry nitrogen one can flow through that, and it is kept dry. It is almost 0 humidity at upper cell. So, the lower cell is partially filled with water, then the fabric specimen is kept, and then upper cell which is dry, then it is kept at that time, at that point. Only thing is that the moisture vapor, that is relative humidity, is calculated. The relative humidity is measured with the time, relative humidity of the upper cell. Okay. The upper cell, the moisture vapor transmission T is given by the change in relative humidity of upper cell. So, that if we know the change in relative humidity in the upper cell, by using this formula we can calculate the moisture vapor transmission. Okay. And this all this data we can get from the standard table. And another method is the dynamic moisture permeable cell, which is capable of evaluating the moisture transmission properties of textile under various conditions: pure diffusion, combined diffusion and convection, and pure convection. So, if we want to know the moisture diffusion at different moisture transmission at different mode, that in that case we can use a dynamic moisture permeable cell. Okay. Next is that the as we have discussed our we have developed one instrument which is microclimate simulator cum moisture transmission tester. So, microclimate simulator means that we want to create the microclimate. Okay. This is the instrument, the schematic diagram of the instrument. Here the water tank is there, which is that is thermostat control. We can control the temperature, it is connected with the heater. We can control the temperature of the water in such a way, so that the skin temperature, the when it is coming out of the skin, that this one, the yellow one is the, it is called, it is a mimic skin. We have used some material which actually represent the skin. So, the temperature of water is maintained in such a fashion, so that the moisture vapor, the temperature of the skin is at 37 degrees Celsius. That is how we can maintain this temperature. So, as the moisture water is getting heated, the moisture will get transmitted through this skin, mimic skin, and what we have created here, the gap, the blue one, dark blue one, this one is the fabric specimen. So, here we can change the at distance. This is actually, this is the skin and the fabric, this actually shows the microclimate. So, what we are interested in here at this point, what is the temperature and what is the humidity of this microclimate, because the temperature and humidity of the microclimate which actually affect the comfort sensation, and this is the fabric, and depending on the fabric type, depending on the transmission characteristics of the fabric, the microclimate, temperature and humidity changes. And also here the air blow system is there. If we want to measure the at different air flow rate, what is the microclimate condition at say wind, at blowing wind condition, that also we can measure. So, this instrument gives idea about the comfort sensation. This is the condition here, fabric sample, okay, and humidity sensor is kept here, mass controller is there. This is the actual instrument. Okay. This is the air channel, and inside the water tank and microclimate portion is there, and here also we can change the thickness of microclimate depending on our requirement, depending on the, we can change the thickness of this can be shifted. Now, if we see here, this picture shows that humidity versus the time, at different time how the humidity changes, and the blue line shows the microclimate and the red line shows the atmosphere, surrounding air. Okay. So, humidity of the surrounding air, if you see, so here in this instrument we have kept the sensor here also at the humidity sensor and temperature sensor at the, this is showing the atmospheric air, this is adjacent air, and microclimate also we are measuring. So, if we see the humidity, so humidity of the adjacent air, so atmospheric air, surrounding air, it is almost constant, but gradually the humidity in the microclimate increases. So, that is due to the presence of fabric and type of moisture vapor transmission, the humidity of the microclimate increases gradually. So, it is increasing, the skin temperature steady increase till here, and gradually it is also increasing. So, at initially the humidity is increasing at a faster rate, but after that rate is becoming slower, because it is getting saturated. Okay. So, it is close to 80, 85, 80%, 75%. After that, after certain time, the fan is switched on, just to simulate that air has started blowing, which actually enhance the convective moisture transmission, convective mass transmission is there, and as the air is blowing, so it takes away the humidity from the microclimate, that is a forced convection is taking place. So, our humidity in the microclimate drops. So, that is it shows, and what we have observed, this is a typical curve, but our experiment shows the at different fabric level, at different fabric the nature of drop humidity is different. So, from there we can select the type of fabric. Okay. and also it depends on the thickness of microclimate. At different thickness, the drop in humidity of microclimate will be different. So, this all this detailed study has been already reported, but this instrument gives idea about the increase in humidity in the microclimate and drop in humidity when the fan is changed. So, we can track the total humidity and also the temperature. The temperature of microclimate, we have seen it increases gradually, because it is a vapor pressure increases. So, temperature of microclimate increases gradually, the hot humidity is increases. So, it is from 25 degrees Celsius initially at the microclimate, it is going gradually, it is increasing. So, it can go further up, but as we have switched on the fan, it drops. So, it is dropping because of the forced convection of heat, forced convection is taking place. So, this instrument measures both heat and mass transmission characteristics. Another technique is holographic bench technique, which is by micro weighing of the moisture level. In this method, the mass flow is measured with the high accuracy using a micro weighing technique, okay, holographic bench technique. The resistance to the water vapor transmission depends on the resistance of air layer and outer air layer and the outer clothing. So, that the outer clothing, the resistance and resistance to air layer. So, in this technique we measure the resistance to air layer. So, holographic bench technique separately measures the water vapor flow resistance offered by the air layer. So, at if we measure the resistance offered by the air layer, then we can actually know the what is the resistance offered by the fabric layer. So, it separates out the moisture vapor resistance by the air layer. So, that is how we can measure the we can use this holographic bench technique, okay. Thus provides the precise vapor resistance value of the textile layer. So, we will stop here, we will continue with the measurement technique, and the next talk we will start with the sweating guarded hot plate. Thank you.